The Biden administration has reached a major milestone in the pursuit of expansive student debt relief, announcing today that over 1 million people have had their federal student loan debt canceled through a program that offers forgiveness to public service workers. With just weeks until the election, the administration has reported approving around $175 billion in total student debt relief for nearly 5 million borrowers through all the actions taken during the Biden's presidency. And Vice President Kamala Harris still has a wide lead over former President Donald Trump among Black voters in battleground states, according to a new poll which shows a key slice of undecided Black voters still poised to make a decision about the presidential election. The findings from a Howard University Initiative on Public Opinion poll in battleground states shows that 84% of likely Black voters will support Harris in November, and only 8% say they'll support Donald Trump. There's another 8% of undecided Black voters, according to this poll. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and allies in his administration have undertaken a robust effort to build opposition to an amendment on the November ballot that would enshrine abortion rights in the Florida state constitution and undo a pinnacle piece of legislation he signed into law. And Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday hammered former President Trump as thin-skinned and a threat to U.S. democracy in a combative interview with Fox News. Harris raised Trump's recent rhetoric about the enemy within and threats to use the military to go after political opponents on and supposed chaos on Election Day to suggest that he is unfit for a second term in office, adding that it is clear to me that Trump is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous. And Harris raised Trump's recent rhetoric about the enemy within at a political rally. She has been upping her attacks on Donald Trump at stops along the campaign trail, reminding voters that a Trump administration would return the White House to days of chaos. And the Archdiocese of Los Angeles has reached a historic $880 million settlement over hundreds of child sex abuse claims. The agreement in principle announced yesterday settles 1,354 child sex abuse claims. According to the plaintiff's attorney in that action, it's the largest single child sex abuse settlement with a Catholic archdiocese. And Israeli forces have killed Hamas's leader, Yahya Sinwar, the architect of last year's October 7th attack on Israel. This is dealing a major blow to the militant group and achieving one of Israel's top objectives for the war. Sinwar was Israel's most wanted man in Gaza, and his death marks a potential inflection point for the war. It will likely bring pressure on Israel from the U.S. and domestically to end the military offensive. Well, there are, of course, exceptions to this dynamic, but Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina all have large numbers of non-white voters and are all swing states. But Harris's clearest path to victory remains a sweep of the famed tipping point states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which historically vote the same way. If she carries this so-called blue wall along with the single electoral vote of Omaha, Nebraska, she'll win the whole election. Pennsylvania in particular has emerged as the probable tipping point state. That's why Harris and Tim Walz, her vice presidential nominee, are spending the final weeks in a campaign bliss in the Rust Belt. Current polling suggests that winning these states is pretty much mandatory. And victories in the more diverse Sun Belt will probably be a bonus. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Nee Cordelay-Corte. He is KBLA's National Political Affairs Analyst, and he's host of A More Perfect Union right here on KBLA weekdays at 1 p.m. Dr. Nee, like myself, has been out on the campaign trail. He's been talking to voters all over this country, and he's been making some pretty astute observations about where this race is, particularly with Black male voters. So I'm anxious to talk to Dr. Nee about his experiences on the road as I continue to share my 7 battleground state tour. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. And in hour two, we're going to be talking to some folks in the great state of Wisconsin, because as I just said, the pathway for Kamala Harris goes through the Rust Belt, goes through the Midwest, and that includes the swing state of Wisconsin. Turnout in the swing state of Wisconsin is expected to be high, particularly amongst Black voters in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is going to be the state the city in Wisconsin that we'll all be looking at on election night. There's some Black voters in that state that say they disagree with Trump on abortion rights and immigration, but they believe that somehow he's better for them on the economy, on things like cryptocurrency. They're concerned about the price of groceries, and also not convinced that world leaders like Putin and Jinping in China will treat Kamala Harris as an equal. These are some of those voters that are leaning Donald Trump, but perhaps can be persuaded that their thoughts about Donald Trump are fake, they're false, they're not accurate, and perhaps may become Kamala Harris voters. We're going to talk to two key political strategists in the state of Wisconsin about what is it going to take to get those voters like this particular male voter to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm going to be in the great state of Wisconsin on Monday. I start my Rust Belt swing. I go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Monday. Then I jump over to Detroit, Michigan for Wednesday. And then I go south to Atlanta, Georgia. I hit 3 states next week in my 7 battleground state tour. Yesterday, I was actually in the great state of Nevada. I was in Las Vegas primarily. I was knocking doors and had an event last night at a barber college. The owner, Marcus Allen, owns 4 barber schools in the state of Nevada. He was the second Black man ever to open a barber school. And he told me up until about 2010 or so, there were no Black barber schools in the state of Nevada. I found that hard to believe, but he told me unequivocally there were no Black schools or schools that trained Black barbers. And he said most of the Black barbers in the state prior to 2010 got their licenses, got their training in other states, and then came to Nevada. So 2010, someone that actually worked for him in one of his barbershops opened a school. And then Marcus Allen decided that there was a need for more schools than that one, and he then opened his own school in 2015. He says now there are about 3 or 4 barber schools that train the majority Black and Latino barbers in the state of Nevada. He also said that young Black men were not training as barbers, that he had an overwhelming number of Latino men. And I was shocked again by this, because when we talked about how much barbers make, I was really, really shocked by that. He said in Las Vegas, a haircut plus a shave and other, grooming that men get can easily cost $100. And with the tip, a barber could get $120, $125. And he said a barber could make on a slow day $400 a day. He said on a really robust day that could go to $600, $700. So just doing the math on a slow day of $400, that's $2,000 a week. That's $8,000 a month, multiplied times 12 is $96,000. Add on $4 more $1,000 for some days you're going to work a little harder. So barbers can make, he said, without doubt, $100,000. And I asked him, how did that compare to hospitality workers? So many young Black and Latino men in Las Vegas work in the hospitality industry. You see them checking you in at your hotels. You see them at the casino tables. You see them at the restaurants. And he said the average salary for a worker, even a union worker in hospitality, was around $20 to $25 an hour. And he said those jobs were about $60,000 a year jobs. So you look at working in hospitality for about 60,000 versus being a barber, where essentially you own your own business. So in the 4 barbershops that Marcus Allen owns, he actually rents barber chairs to barbers, and they run their own business. They set their own schedules. They go out and find their own clients. They set their own prices for the most part. They dictate how much they want to work, how little they may want to work. He said some can rent from him. They could also rent from other barbers so they could have locations in different geographic regions in the state. And I mean, as he was just rattling off all the things, I was saddened to see and to hear so few Black young men and women, for that matter, going into barbering. Great, great, great career. And Marcus, phenomenal backstory, was just as involved, actually had been charged with 2 felonies, served some time in jail, but said he never went to prison. But he said those were wake up moments for him. He got out of jail and realized he needed to do something different. He said had been living in the streets for about 10 years, involved in criminal activity, and he wanted to change his life. So he said he went and got his license. He's gotten his 2 convictions. He's been pardoned by the governor for his 2 convictions, and now he is a community leader. In fact, they want him to run for a city council seat. He is so active, and I want to give him a lot of credit because what he did yesterday, we hosted my conversation, my political conversation, my voter engagement conversation in his barber school because I wanted to talk to his students. In each state, I'm trying to find those low propensity, hard to convince voters. And his students were just that. Many of them were not even registered. Thankfully, Nevada has registration up to the same day, so it's not too late. Many of them didn't know any of the issues that were being talked about by each presidential candidate. And we had a chance during this conversation with Marcus and a city council member and a pastor and an audience that included some CPAs and some lawyers and other smart people. We had a chance to talk to those young people about the importance of voting and why their vote mattered and how this election, and I really drilled down on them as being entrepreneurs, as folks who are going to go into the workforce, not and work for on a job, but actually have their own businesses, be independent contractors, and why it was so important that they understood and knew about Kamala Harris's opportunity plan for Black men, the $20,000 forgivable loans. I say, look, guys, and here's one woman, that $20,000 loan can help you start your own barber salon, your own barber shop. It could get you set up in your own business. And I tell you, we saw some eyes that were sparkling. We saw some folks who were, sitting on the edge of their seats, who were really, really listening. And we think and I say we because me and my panel and my other audience members, we do think we were successful in getting some of those young people to decide to go out and register to vote. And Marcus, this is what Marcus did that was so brilliant. He told them, okay, guys, I have this woman coming in and she's going to do this conversation. I will give you extra credit if you stay and participate. And so those, they were a little reluctant, but we provided them with some food and some snacks. And he gave them extra credit and they stayed to the end. They asked questions, they were engaged. And I felt so gratified because this whole tour is not about talking to folks who are already committed, already going to vote, but it is reaching into these battleground states and finding these low propensity, they call them low information sometimes, voters, and getting them to sign up, to register, and to vote in this election. So I want to thank my team. I want to thank everyone that came out to the Masterpiece Barber College in Las Vegas last night that helped us talk to those voters who otherwise would have missed this election, would not have had accurate information that they can make conformed choices about. Looking forward to meeting similar voters next week in Milwaukee on Monday, Detroit on Wednesday, and Atlanta on Friday. Folks say, hey, they can't believe there are still low information or undecided voters out there. Trust me, I've been to 2 battleground states and I've met them in each state. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today.
Presenting Again Fling's love story. Dear love of my life, we were on the 12B bus this morning when I caught a whiff. A scent so fresh, so life-changing, I had to find its source. Alas, I didn't know if you were the woman in the pink freshly washed cardigan or the retired mailman next to me, but I knew one of you was my soulmate. Ah, the scent of Gain Flings. Try Gain Flings with OxyBoost and Febreze.
What's wrong?
My travel rewards card didn't earn enough miles for my vacation.
Are you crying? Are you crying because of that other credit card?
Uh-huh.
Well, switch to the Capital One Venture card. Venture lets you redeem miles on any travel purchase.
Really?
Yep, and you earn unlimited double miles on every purchase every single day. The Capital One Venture card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king.
You've got a Pepto predicament, moviegoer.
Hey, I can hear your stomach grumbling.
Sorry, I ate that entire tub of popcorn with extra butter.
You overdid it, and now your movie has turned into a blockbuster bellyache. Undo it with Pepto.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto chewables provide fast 5-symptom relief, so you can focus on the action on the big screen instead of in your stomach. When you overdo it, undo it with Pepto. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Watch out! You got me! The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady.
We are back, and Dr. Nee Corte, KBLA's national political correspondent and host of A More Perfect Union, right here on KBLA every day at 1 p.m., is joining me. So, Dr. Nee, you know, I've been out hitting the streets in these battleground states, and I heard you're out there as well. Tell me where you've been and what you are hearing from some of the voters that you've engaged with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kudos to you, Areva. You have really been pounding the pavement hard, and that's what it's going to take. I mean, we know right now this race is a statistical dead heat, and this is going to be a turnout election. And so every door knocked, every phone call made, every text message sent is really going to count. If Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are successful in really turning out this unity coalition like we've never seen it before. I mean, this goes beyond the Biden-Harris coalition in 2020, beyond the Obama-Biden coalition, and it probably rivals the Rainbow Push coalition back in the 80s. And so this is really the cusp of a very special moment. And there are a lot of folks that are doing anything and everything to turn out the vote. I've had a chance to travel with the vice president, covering her in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, and I can tell you that there's one particular story that has stuck with me coming out of Savannah, Georgia. It was a dad that came out to a Harris Walz rally, and I think it might have been on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I asked him, why was it important for you to be here? And he told me about his daughter and how the year before his daughter had been sexually assaulted, and where Vice President Harris stands on a woman's right to choose, on a woman being able to decide what she's going to do with her body, not her government, not Donald Trump, not anybody else, that really resonated with him. And so, like you, I really enjoy engaging just sort of real people on the ground to understand what's motivating them, what caught their attention, what broke through the swirl, the noise in the media landscape that reached their mind and in many cases even reached their hearts. And so I think about that story, and then going up to Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was a motley crew of people that showed up to support both Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, who were both in attendance. I saw folks.
I know what motley means, but how are you using it? Or give us a more description when you say motley crew.
Sure. I mean, these were a cast of folks that we probably wouldn't think would show up in the same room together, right? And so, there were members of the Divine Nine. There were union folks that were there. There were some elected officials there. One person I spoke to off the record who was giving me moderate Republican vibes, we'll put it that way. And they were all there, and there was a sense of enthusiasm that I hadn't seen amongst, such a very divergent, or at least seemingly divergent group of people. And so these are some of the stories that just off the top of my head that, as you know, we don't just report on these, but it almost feels like we live with these stories. We carry these stories everywhere we go. And the question is, are people going to carry these stories into the ballot box by November 5th?
Well, Dr. Nee, I can tell you, I am a little skeptical when I hear all these reports of undecided voters, but I met them. I met some in Arizona and I met some in Nevada. We knocked doors in both states. Before I hosted my own voter engagement event, I would go out with canvassers and knock on doors. And there was a woman that we met yesterday, young woman, works from home, has a 9-year-old son. And she said she had been on vacation. She said she hadn't been paying close attention to the news, and she didn't know a lot about either candidates, had her ballot, had been mailed to her, but she had not made up her mind. And I had a chance to talk to her about reproductive freedom, reproductive rights. And she said, I'm not so worried about this for me, but I have a sister. And you could see her eyes light up. And when I kept telling her, there are two candidates, and there's only one that's going to, make sure your sister has a right to abortion care if she needs it. And that really, she didn't know that. And, a little surprised, but she said she hadn't really thought a lot about it. And then also last night, I was with a group of barber students, all male except one female, at a barber college. And these are young people who some had not even registered yet. Now, thankfully, in Nevada, they still had time. Others were registered, but didn't know if they were even going to vote. And we had a chance to talk about their opportunities as barbers, independent contractors, and how that $20,000 forgivable loan that Kamala Harris is proposing in this new economic opportunity plan for Black men, how they could benefit from that. And again, I saw some eyes light up. I saw people get excited. So it is so important that we talk to folks and not assume everybody's watching.
That's right.
The news or reading the New York Times, because they're not. I mean, people
That's right.
They have kids. This lady told us with the 9-year-old, she had been to Disneyland. She had been out with her child. And she's like, I don't tune into the news because it's negative. So there are people out there that we've got to reach. And, kudos to the Harris Walz team and all the volunteers, many of whom are getting on buses coming from California, going to those battleground states. But knocking those doors, talking to voters is really important.
It's super important. And, I think there's an opportunity for us to refresh the playbook, or for Democrats to refresh the playbook. Every presidential election year, you hear people talk about barbershop outreach, and typically it's usually at the last minute of the campaign. We could talk about that part of it another time. But just hearing you share these stories from the Barber College, it makes me wonder, how many of these campaigns are targeting the barber colleges? like setting up outside the college in the parking lot. Like that really sounds to be a captive audience of folks. There are barber colleges across the country. And I really appreciated just sort of learning about how this opportunity agenda for Black men, this overall opportunity agenda for America, how when people really zero in on certain aspects of it, they see that, oh, what this means is she wants to put money on the streets. She wants to put money on the streets to support people who had that idea of starting this business or that business, but they didn't have the capital. They didn't have the capital. And one of the things that, as you know, Areva, that VP Harris talks about very often is traveling the country and hearing our fellow Americans talk about their ambitions, right? And if they just had a little bit of capital, if they just had just a little less red tape, right? Imagine what that ambition could look like unleashed.
Yeah, no, so important. And again, we shouldn't assume everybody read about it. Everybody tuned in when she made the announcement, but it's the job of surrogates. It's the job of volunteers to make sure that people understand what's at stake in this election and the opportunities that Kamala Harris is talking about providing versus the doomsday that Donald Trump is painting. When we come forward, we're going to talk about this rhetoric, this enemy within language from Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris kind of turned it on its head when her Fox interview last night. But Donald Trump is becoming increasingly unhinged in his rhetoric. We're going to talk about how that might be impacting this race and what's happening in the last, 19 days away from one of the most consequential elections of our time. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
The right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Pharrell's animated Lego biopic Piece by Piece made $3.8 million in its opening weekend, below its $16 million budget. It has an 81% critics rating and a 93% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The St. Louis Reparations Commission has submitted its report to Black Mayor Tashara Jones, recommending cash payments up to $25,000 for affected communities, affordable housing, expanded low-cost health care, and increased police oversight. The Bishop Ford Freeway is back open after it was closed for several hours after a suspect fired a gun at another vehicle on Chicago's far south side. The incident happened late last night on I-94 near 115th Street. The driver who was targeted was not hurt and the alleged shooter drove away. And the FTC is making it easier to cancel digital subscriptions. It announced it would soon put in place a final click-to-cancel rule. It will require sellers to make it as easy for consumers to cancel their enrollment as it was to sign up. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Over in Pasadena, watch for a stall reported in lanes of the 210 East before Highway 134. A delay is starting to run heavy from Mountain Street, Seco interchange, and watch for some people outside the vehicle. There's another stall blocking the right lane of Compton 710 North at Alondra Boulevard. There's a 30-minute backup from Pico Avenue, Pierce A through J interchange. Norwalk 605 South before Firestone Boulevard. Watch for an accident on the right shoulder with a 15 to 20-minute backup from Peck Road. And in West LA, an hour's worth of a drive is running heavy and backed up on the 405 South between Wilshire Boulevard and Santa Fe Avenue.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Legendary Grambling football coach Eddie Robinson has been nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025. Robinson, who passed away in 2007, coached 56 years at the prominent HBCU before retiring in 1997. More than 200 of his players were drafted by NFL teams, including 3 Hall of Famers: defensive end Buck Buchanan of the Kansas City Chiefs, cornerback Willie Brown of the Oakland Raiders, and wide receiver Charlie Joyner of the San Diego Chargers. Robinson coached the first black quarterback to play for the Rams. James Harris was a Grambling product before he came to the Rams in 1973. Harris played 4 seasons with the Rams and led them to the NFC Championship game in 1975. Robinson also coached Doug Williams, the first black quarterback to play in the Super Bowl. The Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025 will be announced in February during Super Bowl week. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Hey, LA, it's time to step up and be a climate change hero. Go Metro and help us shape a better future for all Angelinos. From enhancing our diverse communities to preserving our planet, Metro is dedicated to making a positive impact with every ride. Start your journey at metro.net. If you have asthma, you know that there are certain things that can set off your asthma symptoms. These things are called triggers, and patients with severe asthma have an average of 8 triggers. It could be pollen, dust, pollution, colds, viruses, smoke, or stress. If you know your symptoms, you have already taken the first step to managing your asthma. The next step is to write your triggers down in a notebook or journal and record your symptoms when you come across those triggers. This will give your healthcare provider valuable information about what you can do to help manage your triggers. By understanding your triggers and writing them down, you are on your way to taking back control of your lung health. Visit luma-edu.com for more guidance. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their program. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Dr. Nee Corte is joining me in this hour. He is KBLA's national political correspondent. He's been traveling with the VP as she is crisscrossing this country, hitting these battleground states. The VP, Dr. Nee, is in 3 states sometimes in one day, and we should expect over the next couple of weeks, the last weeks of this campaign, she's going to spend a lot of time in those critical battleground states, but she's also been stopping to do some interviews. There was some critique of her by some folks in the media that she wasn't sitting down doing enough interviews. Well, she's sat down with podcasters. She sat down with radio hosts. She even went on Fox News last night, had a pretty contentious interview. But what did you make of the Brett Baier showing her a clip from Donald Trump, an ad or a clip from Donald Trump, but editing out the statement that Donald Trump has made that is making him appear increasingly more unhinged when he talks about the enemy within and using the military to attack U.S. citizens?
Areva, I actually thought that was one of the most memorable parts of the interview with Brett Baier. I thought it was one of the most memorable interviews of this election cycle. Look, the vice president has proven to be unafraid of going into what many Democrats would call hostile territory, Fox News, and sitting with Brett Baier, one of their mainstays, for a little over a half an hour. Really making clear where she stands as a matter of policy, but also connecting it to real people, and reminding people the choice that they have this November. That was a very important call out, especially considering the avalanche of mis and disinformation that we are seeing like we've never seen before. The fact that she did that in real time, the fact that she was that present and that attentive to what was happening, the fact that the clip was set up one way, what aired was something different, right? And she wouldn't let him move forward without acknowledging that wait a minute, that's not what she was talking about. And this is a great lesson, I think, to Democrats who have been largely disinterested and in some cases afraid to go into what is the distorted orbit of Fox News sometimes. They've been afraid to go into that orbit because they didn't know how to handle situations like that. And so I think what Vice President Harris did last night was create a blueprint, for how Democrats can take their message, to take their plans to move America forward into seemingly hostile territory.
Well, we know Donald Trump won't do it. No one can imagine that he would accept an invitation from MSNBC to sit down with Rachel Maddow or Lawrence O'Donnell. In fact, he wouldn't even go to the CBS 60-minute interview. He also canceled an interview with CNBC. So he is very clear about what he is not going to do because he doesn't want to have to answer those tough questions. And even at a recent town hall that he participated in on Fox News, he did what he typically does these days, which is to dodge the difficult questions that have been posed to him. But in the last, 20 days away from this election, what do you think is going to be the most consequential thing that VP Harris can do? Obviously, she's going to spend a lot of time in these battleground states. We know Hillary Clinton got really harangued for not doing that in the 2016 election. I think all Democrats learned a good lesson from that. But other than rallies and, meeting people in coffee shops and other places, what would you like to see her do?
I think continuing to do interviews, continuing to turn up the dial in terms of the fire that she has inside of us. We saw it not just in that Brett Baer interview on Fox News, but for those of us that were geeking out watching her a rally in Wisconsin this evening, she was also bringing the fire there. I think people want to see the fire in the belly that she has. And I think they will see that. It's just a matter of how often she can sort of get out there and cut through the noise and allow people to see that. I think it's also critically important that Vice President Harris continue to connect her proposed policies with real people. Called me old-fashioned, but I think that those real people stories still matter. Think about the Univision town hall that former President Trump did recently, where he performed, according to a number of people's accounts, not well. And as the camera panned to the audience of mostly Latino voters, they looked confused. They looked disinterested. They looked like they were listening to somebody lie through their teeth, right? And so I think the more that the vice president can get out there and interface in that way with real people, the better.
Well, there was some your critique, I think, is the prevailing norm about his performance. But I did read where some said he wasn't as combative as he typically can be. He didn't use the same, pejorative rhetoric about, immigrants that he typically uses. He didn't talk about his mass deportation plan. But one of the things that struck me in that town hall was a Latino person in the audience, got up and talked about his concerns and said, asked Donald Trump, what was he going to do to address them? And Donald Trump basically said, chances are, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically said, you're probably not going to vote for me, and that's okay. And so that's kind of his go-to when he feels cornered, rather than trying to, give a voter some hope or a logical response to a question. He just kind of becomes kind of defensive and says, well, you can believe what you believe, and I'm not going to waste any time trying to convince you otherwise. You're not going to vote for me anyhow. And I think that's going to be problematic because people want responses. And one thing that Kamala Harris did so well in that Fox interview was she acknowledged the pain of people that the anchor tried to suggest she was responsible for their deaths, and she is not. But even though he tried to distort the facts, she still acknowledged that the people's lives have been lost, and she showed her humanity while at the same time being very clear in taking control of that interview. And Donald Trump has a hard time doing that. If somebody disagrees with him, his solution is, let me just call the National Guard and stamp you out. That's his response to anyone that doesn't agree with him. And I think people are getting tired of that.
I think so. I think so. And I think one of the things that VP Harris does very well is she's created a permission structure for different constituencies to get on board to the campaign. And so whether you're talking about moderate Republicans, also known as orphaned Nikki Haley voters, or if you're talking about folks that are a part of the Black community, if you're talking about folks that are independents, folks that are rural voters, her campaign has really done a nice job rolling out policy proposals, rolling out real people stories that connect with these constituencies. And she's, unafraid to share a stage with Republicans and saying, look, we may not agree on a lot, but we agree on democracy. We agree on democracy, and you have a home here in this campaign. And I think there are a lot of Republicans under the radar that are going to come out for Harris and going to help to deliver a decisive win where it counts, but are not going to make a whole lot of fanfare about it.
Yeah, when we come forward, to talk about the Israeli forces, the killing of this key Hamas leader. What might this mean for a ceasefire, the return of hostages? Because that continues to be an issue. One of the events I held in Tempe, Arizona, a young man got up, took the mic, and said he was voting for Jill Stein, Dr. Nee. And he said it was a protest vote. He knew Jill Stein wouldn't win, but that he could not vote for Harris because he tied Harris to Biden, who he said was allowing genocide to exist in Gaza, and said that he did not find her policies, VP Harris's policies, to be much different. And there's some recent articles out about voters in Michigan who we know over 100,000, if not more, did a protest vote during the primary, and now they don't know exactly what to do. There's a lot of conflict because there's not been an endorsement of Harris, but they obviously don't want to do anything that would cause Donald Trump to win. So some of these voters feel like they have no place to go, and some are saying they just may not vote for president at all. When we come forward, I want to talk about the impact of this murder today of a key Hamas leader. Might that, be beneficial in terms of ending this war? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets. 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
That morning chill means truck season.
5 more minutes.
No snoozing. Do it all in a Chevy Colorado or Silverado, including the class-leading range of the Silverado EV.
Talking to me?
Work, play, hauling, off-roading, a Chevy truck can take it all.
Okay, I'm up.
It's Chevy Truck Season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
From the first day of kindergarten through the day they graduate high school. In California, 38% of students attend a public school that fails to meet minimum health standards. That's why we need Prop 2. Voting yes on Prop 2 will fund urgent repairs at local schools, protect kids from toxic mold, asbestos, and lead, ensure clean drinking water, and repair leaky ceilings and storm damage. Yes on Prop 2. to fix what's actually broken. All funds go to local schools without raising taxes. You heard that right. So join the California NAACP nurses and teachers and vote yes on 2, because all our kids deserve a safe place to learn. Ad paid for by Yes on Prop 2, sponsored by Nonprofit Education, Labor and Business Associations. Ad committee's top funders: California Building Industry Association, Coalition for Adequate School Housing, California Teachers Association.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way Black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
Dr. Nee, we know there are a lot of pro-Palestinian voters in the U.S. who are still not committed to voting for Kamala Harris. They don't want Donald Trump to win because they know his policies around the Palestinian war, around Palestinian people, is horrible and will continue to be. But they also blame Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, for supporting Israel. Well, today there was a big development in Israeli forces killing one of the key Hamas leaders. And this killing represents a major win for Prime Minister Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, who had vowed to destroy the leadership and military capabilities of Hamas. So now that this has happened, this leader has been murdered, does this create an opportunity for the U.S. to put more pressure on Israel to end this war and to negotiate some kind of deal for the return of hostages, and perhaps give those Palestinian voters, those pro-Palestinian voters in the U.S., an opportunity to vote for VP Harris?
Areva, this is a very defining moment in a conflict that, as you know, has lasted over a year. It's a conflict that has had a heavy toll squarely on the people of Gaza, where there are tens of thousands of people who have reportedly been killed in this conflict. Of course, the 1,200 folks who were killed in Israel, and the number of hostages that have been taken that still have not been returned safely, some of which are American hostages. This has been a mess, and we have an opportunity potentially to begin to emerge from this mess and to chart a course towards peace. The question is, will Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is he willing to make that happen? As has been reported, the Hamas leader that was killed, Sinwar, he was supposedly one of the holdouts in these negotiations. And now that he is no longer alive and a part of those negotiations, does it create a fresh opportunity to close this deal, to get this deal done, and to begin to chart a path towards peace? I would imagine the immediate days are going to be extremely important and will offer us some clues as to where this conflict will turn. Obviously, the return of the hostages is critically important. But one of the fears that a number of people who've been following this closely have is, a fear of retribution towards the hostages that are currently being held. So number one priority is we've got to get those hostages returned. This is high stakes diplomacy, and it's high stakes not just because of the hostages involved and the havoc that this has wreaked on the Palestinians and the people of Israel and folks of conscience around the world. But it's high stakes because, as you've noted, in states like Michigan that are going to be super critical and could swing this election either way, and uncommitted voters in other states, they are watching this very, very closely.
And what do you make of those voters? Again, big article in the New York Times about these voters, many in Dearborn, Michigan in particular, now having some internal strife because some of the hardcore activists believing that their leadership is quote unquote going soft on Kamala Harris, that they've given her kind of a tacit endorsement, although they haven't said that, they haven't been explicit about it. But they feel like the leadership is making signs and making statements to suggest that they should vote for her. And those who, really, really hardcore about this believe that she is, as well as Joe Biden, as much to blame for what's happening in Palestine as Benjamin Netanyahu is, and that they cannot vote for her. And then, there are others in this group who say, look, we have to be more pragmatic because not voting for her is voting for Donald Trump. And we know policies under him will only be worse. I did hear one of the people interviewed for this article said he wanted to hold out a vote for the Democrats because he thought a holdout vote would force them around in 4 years and that they would become more powerful as a group because they would have impacted the election, i.e. thrown the election to Donald Trump, and Democrats would have to listen to them. Now, the counter to that, someone else they interviewed said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, in so many words, because they said the damage that Donald Trump would do in office in 4 years would be so devastating, there'd be nothing to come around to, or that they would suffer so many losses during that 4-year period. But that's kind of the internal fight that this group of Palestinian, activists and supporters are having in a key battleground state like Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I think I suspect that ultimately folks are going to vote their conscience on this. I think the way that the administration handles this most recent development, the killing of Sinwar, one of the masterminds or the mastermind of the October 7 attack, I think how the president and vice president handle this in the coming days is going to send a signal and may offer a permission structure to these uncommitted voters, not just in Michigan, but in other critical states across the country, to simply vote their conscience. And, I think we've seen that certainly with other groups. I mean, think about the Teamsters, for example, right? The National Teamsters, decided not to endorse anyone for president. However, we saw Teamsters chapters in different states, led by the Black Caucus amongst the Teamsters in those states, decide differently, and they have squarely pledged their support, a number of them, behind Vice President Harris. And so, if that's possible in the Teamsters Union, I think that's also possible among the coalition of folks that are organizing the uncommitted movement.
Yeah, and before I let you go, one story that really bothered me today, not political, but I don't know if you're a Catholic or have any friends who are Catholic, but the Archdiocese of LA paying $800 million in a settlement involving 1,354 child sexual abuse claims, bringing the total that the Archdiocese has paid out over $1 billion. It's mind-boggling. And the people involved, the leadership that helped hide priests, that helped cover up, is just, it's disgusting. I don't even know what to say about this. The churches had to sell off property, close schools that were so critical in neighborhoods and communities, close churches, and pretty much liquidate in order to come up with this kind of money.
Yeah.
All because they did not discipline predators.
Yeah. I mean, the hypocrisy abounds, the deficit of moral leadership abounds. I went to Catholic school for high school. As you know, I teach at Pepperdine University, a proud Christian university. And when I saw that story today, I couldn't help but just sort of feel sickened by it. You know, those were over 1,300 kids, you know, that people may not have believed, right? I mean, I think about the human toll that had on those kids and their families over the course of so many years. And it's another reminder of not just the predators that are among us and our need to be vigilant, but it's also a cautionary tale about the enablers that allow the predators to hide amongst us, to hide in the shadows, and to create more harm over a longer period of time. And so my heart goes out to each and every one of those survivors. I hope that along with this payout, there's some changes to policy that will make it easier to fast track due process and to get these predators away from these kids.
Yeah, sickening. I think the most appropriate word to describe what this is. 1,300 kids' lives have been ruined by people that they trusted, people that we trust, people held out to the community as being, pillars of integrity. And for them to betray these children, their families, their congregations, their communities in this way, is just sickening. Thank you, Dr. Nee, so much. Good luck to you on the campaign trail with the VP and all your efforts to keep folks educated and informed about this very, very critical election. I'm sure we'll be talking again real soon.
That's right.
We are in the last days of this consequential election. Hard to believe we are where we are. But I'm energized. I get back on the road Sunday and head into the Midwest and want to see what those voters are thinking and be going to the great state of Wisconsin, where our VP is today, and in hour two, talking to two leaders in Milwaukee who are going to be instrumental in helping to turn out the vote in that swing state of Wisconsin. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
Stay hydrated.
Oh, I know.
Right.
I don't tell you the stories of being run out of communities, and there's some hostile white people out there too.
Look, I know it. I know.